17.
Yeah, away we go.
So this is episode 17, part one. Probably not going to have more than part two. That's Steve. I'm Al. Lunch today is from Phil's Ice House. This is the bacon with egg on a burger. I think it's Jollyville. With,
I'm not sure what they call this one, but it's just the Allendale. It's just a classic. Allendale's a neighborhood. This
right.
Isn't.
And
it's just a classic burger.
Green bean fries. These things are really good.
Oh, you got the green bean fries?
Yeah.
I got the combo of the sweet potato and normal fries.
Right.
And you know what? You can start.
Okay. So, assuming this is a part one and not just a really long part, this is basically going to be the part with all the what's the term, qualifiers and whatnot. So the first qualifier is that TikTok has rolled out a bunch of changes, and so we're going to try and watch our language a little bit more. So most of what we're going to talk about is what happened to Charlie Kirk, and we will probably not even reference him by name beyond here, except to say CK. We'll probably just call him CK from here on out, just to tone things down a little bit. And of course, instead of anything else, we're just going to refer to the incident where he was unalived, because that's TikTok language, whatever. So the big thing that people on the right were doing, specifically among others.
Well, let's qualify with one more.
Okay, go ahead, sure.
If you've seen our videos in the past, we've always kind of pointed that or said and predicted that something like this would happen. Well, we didn't say which side would be on who or who would it be against. I was thinking more like probably would happen once again to another Democrat or a progressive, like it has in the past. Like there's like 10 examples just in the last couple of years. Pipe bombs to Obama. The lawmakers up in Minnesota. Time and time again, it's usually on the right. That it happened this way around to someone on the far right or on the fringes of the right. Not exactly surprising, but what's really surprising is who might have done it, and we'll get to that. But I want to qualify this by saying that that didn't condone. We weren't condoning violence. We weren't saying that was it. We talked about in a lot of different ways of civil disobedience, civil unrest, resistance. There's many different ways that you can do that. It doesn't involve violence. When the violence occurs, look, statistically, analytically, if you look throughout the history, when these things happen, violence occurs, right? So you have to understand that when you ramp up that rhetoric like that, it's almost inevitable. I know that people will say, oh, it's the choice of the person to get like that. But when you're spitting hate speech, time and time again, throughout history, it results in violence, and why would it be any different today? Especially with this gun culture and everything else.
I mean, there's a term for it. It's called stochastic terrorism, and technically,
right.
I didn't
want to get into terms confused.
Well,
but go ahead.
It gets a little convoluted because normally the idea. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. January 6th. Trump didn't actually pull any triggers or march or do any of that, but he effectively called for what happened, and CK is the same way. He didn't tell anybody by name, I want you to go do that.
Right.
But he essentially said, violence by our group against these groups is acceptable. Is the meta message that he put across. Now, does that give anyone the right to have done what happened to him? No, I'm not saying that. Right. And whoever did this to him, regardless, whoever did this to him should be held accountable, should be put in jail, should whatever the law, up to the point of the law in the state where it happened, and so on. We're not negating that.
And if he was doing this for some cause, it was counterproductive. But coming to find out, that might have been his point. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Right. But that was the point I was about to make, is that the people on the right, up to and including the president, the instant this hit the news, they were trying to spin it as, oh, this was somebody on the left. We've got to retaliate against them. We've got to blah, 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 blah. Almost everybody on the left who was saying anything about this was being very, very, very careful to not assume that we knew anything about the guy holding the pew-pew, because because it turns out, of course, from what we currently see, that the perpetrator appears to be, from what we currently know, it looks like he was almost exactly the opposite of what you would expect somebody on the left to have looked like and been. Raised. Though the twist to that is that while we may know who he was and we may understand how he thought, we don't have his motives for this at all at this point. That's still
right. And there's so many speculations being tossed around about that. I want to get to that later. Maybe that will be a second segment, because there's a whole thing about that Groper movement and how the blacktown things. But and then I'll talk about how I highly doubt he was radicalized to the left. Maybe but anyways, it doesn't look that way. So let's just go to the incident, I want to say one more thing about that too, I guess, and about what the difference is between, and we've talked about this in the past, about free speech and holding people accountable for free speech, right? So when somebody is being abusive in their language, just like if they're being abusive physically or abusive to somebody in a relationship in any way, the person who's taking the abuse, if they react abusively, is called reactive abuse. And, I don't equate the two as the same. So there's a false equivalence here. When you hear people from the right saying, you guys have been spitting hate at us, blah, 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 and all these other things, what they don't seem to recognize, and this goes to the empathy thing, the lack of empathy, which they say, well, if you look at what he said, it's taken out of context because he said it's really just sympathy. And if you really listen to the whole thing, he's talking about pity. I pity those people. He says that, because they're like, he didn't really say that people shouldn't have empathy, they should have sympathy. But when you listen to it in its entirety, and you realize that he literally says, you can't do that. You can't have empathy because it doesn't exist. You have sympathy. And what he's really describing when you go further is pity. And pity is when you just look down on somebody and you're pitiful. You see the difference? So it didn't help the cause that they put it in full context when you really read into the meta value of what he's saying. And if you look into the context, he said it over and over. It was what he said. It wasn't just this time in that full contextual manner. So it didn't help to put it in full context at all. But once again, this goes to distorting what he's saying and his little dog whistles and everything else, that when he's talking, when he's speaking, what is really being translated in the subconscious of these people. But when a person is obviously saying things that are inciting this kind of hatred towards people, and then he'll just say, well, I'm just saying the facts, but he's not putting them in context. So when he says, certain facts about, inner city racial violence. Well, on that point, there are two key things. One, I don't think he actually did have his facts right. That's point number one. Sometimes he did. But he was so misconstrued. But the other thing is, he was saying it as if those facts in and of themselves proved anything. Yes, there you go. Which they didn't. Sometimes they were not facts. When you put facts out there and you're trying to make a point, you still have to make the point. And he was just basically saying, "Oh, well, these facts, if they're true, they're like inner city violence is X, Y, and Z, and this crime is this, and they're more likely for this." And then you say, "Well, what are you trying to say? Are you a racist then, and think that they're inherently?" No, I didn't say that. Well, then why did you put this fact out there? Right, without any context, or why it's that way, or about arrest rates and how they're arrested far more often and they're wrongfully charged far more often, and that the rates would be higher if everyone was arrested equally and convicted equally. You don't get those contexts when he's speaking. It's the implication of the cherry-picked figures, and not putting them in contextual and societal. And historical. Well, and I haven't looked it up, so I will put that out there. But I'm pretty sure that on the things that you're referencing right now, he was using facts that were at least 10, 15, maybe even 20 years old. So what would those stats look like today? Why was he operating in the past unless that just furthers his argument by remaining in the past? You know what I mean? Right. Well, even if it's a historical truth, it probably wasn't accurate in what he was saying anyways. He's always making implications with his cherry-picked facts, which are not put into context and scrutinized properly.
Well, he also got really, really good at denying people's own reality. What I mean is,
Right. Well, that's what an abuser does.
yes, but like some of these videos, somebody will come up to the mic and they'll say, "This happened to me. I lived through this. I did this. I've seen this." And he's like, "Well, that's not true."
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute. That's what she might or might not understand a bigger picture, but that happened to her. Why are you dismissing her experience?
His explanation would be because you're looking for it, and that's why you found it. You're looking for it, so you're just finding it. Where and then they'll use some study about how if you tell somebody they have a dot on their nose, they'll act weird because they think that that people are looking at them when they're actually not. And it's like, no, but that study doesn't prove that racism doesn't exist. Like,
Yeah.
that covert microaggressions don't exist. Like that, there's an underbelly of racial tension that exists. So, anyways, back to my point. I'm starting kind of rambling here. I'm just exhausted with all this stuff. I didn't even know where we were going to go with this, but I kind of like this angle here,
sure.
because it's kind of trying to explain the confusion here of like how on earth half this population doesn't even recognize that he was harmful to people. And even some people that are minorities don't recognize it because they're wrapped up in this religion.
Well, and even some people who are minorities who recognize how harmful he is, I feel like they're bending over backwards. I shouldn't say to protect him, but to basically say, "Oh, let's not say anything bad. He's just been unalived." I'm not trying to like beat up on him because he's
I'm not
unalived.
either.
I'm saying let's look at what we're
nobody
doing.
deserves that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say nobody. Maybe.
No.
I mean, like if you're actively engaging in a shooting at someone and you get shot, well, maybe you deserve it. You get my point.
Right, and it's not quite to that point, but it's
right. But he
Yeah.
wasn't doing that. He was spitting hate speech, and he should just be shut down and not allowed to speak. And they'll say, "Oh, that's silencing." But I'm sorry, when you're inciting this sort of stuff, yeah, go ahead, do it on your TikTok. Go ahead and do it wherever you want, but not in an institution of learning. That's disingenuous. If you look at the title of his thing, "Prove Me Wrong," that's not debating. That's like me coming up to a bunch of people and saying, "Prove that there's not a spaghetti monster in the sky. Prove me wrong." You can't prove that there's not.
Right,
If I keep on just inserting, there is, and that's what he does every time.
I mean, I'm not saying that he wasn't completely disingenuous in the format that he used to debate, but on a related note, I know a lot of people, myself included, have gotten exhausted by the debate format, so to speak, because even when the people that I like are 100% correct and are making the right arguments, it feels like we're bringing somebody from the opposition up just to beat up on them. And that's just not...
But they don't lose, because the people that watch it that are on his side will say, "Oh, that guy schooled them." And it's like,
Yeah,
no,
they're going to say that he won no matter what he said. Yeah,
yeah, no matter what.
Right.
So you
Which
cannot
is
win.
also true.
It's a pointless endeavor. I kind of was like on the fence for the Cambridge thing because I'm like, yeah, I suppose this guy for the fool that he is, but no, people thought he won. It's like, and I kind of said that too when we had that thing. So, this is the underlying sickness, and because it was in the guise of religion, was in the guise of Christianity, this far right extreme Christianity,
Right?
This Christian nationalism thing, where they crossed over into politics, which got really strong in the middle part of the last century. God We Trust wasn't even put on the currency until what, the 50s or something?
Late 40s, early 50s. I
Something
forget
like
the
that,
exact
yeah.
date, but yeah.
So this really got strong around that time when the evangelicals decided that they didn't want to be, they didn't like what was going on with other people's lives. So, they're the ones who are always saying, "You're being so intrusive. Why are you telling you're being abusive towards us?" And we're just saying, "No, you just can't tell us what to do. And we're not shoving it in your face until you try to deny us of our humanity." Then they'll be like, "Oh, you're shoving it in our face." No, I'm just saying, don't do that to me. But once again, I want to focus on this reactive abuse about holding accountability free speech and stifling free speech. About how every accusation they make is generally a confession, so that they started it, and then when they get the mirror held to their face, instead of looking at it, they turn the mirror around and project it back at you. And it's just, when you recognize it, it becomes so clear that you'll literally watch somebody. I was listening to this lady, and she was talking about everything changed when Obama became president. And she was right, it did. But then the reason why, which was so fucking bizarre, he wanted to give people health care.
Like that was a bad thing.
That was a bad thing. Like, and then all these things she was saying was basically lies, right? Or just complete distortions, or
just bizarre shit like, oh, gee, giving people health care is a bad thing? What?
Well, these people believe that because it's government intrusion. So, and then they're trying to keep you down because, and they're trying to, even though you're under the thumb of this authoritarian religion and this authoritarian, and like I said, this all goes back to these people are in a trauma bond from the top, from their psychopathic Abrahamic, religions. If they distort it to that extent. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some Christians who are that are Jesus-like.
But the way I view it is the ones who are, they would have been good people anyways. They just happen to be Christian.
Yes,
I'm in more and more. I don't buy this whole thing that they're good because they're Christian. No, they happen to be good. They are, and they happen to be Christian.
You don't need religion to have a core set of values. What you do need religion for is morality that you want to impose over on top of core values to supersede them, which you shouldn't do, because if the moral breaks a core value, then you can't apply it to everyone. And one of those core values is autonomy. If you're not hurting anyone, so if two people are consensually doing something, or something's happening and it's none of your business and it doesn't hurt anybody, stay the hell out. But those are morals.
And at its best, religion can provide community. I mean, I had somebody say that basically Christianity is just a book club, and I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty good book club. I just don't like the book.
Yeah, stay out of the Old Testament for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But and then take the good stuff from Jesus, and there's some things you want to get rid of. But anyways, there's some good stuff that you can get from the New Testament to pull out.
But they obsess
They
over
probably got it from Eastern philosophy.
They obsess over parts that they don't even abide by and can't even explain. I mean, the whole Ten Commandments, half of them they don't follow, they don't understand, and yet they want to shove them.
Well, half of them are just about praising a narcissistic sky god,
right?
Rather than any other ones.
Yeah.
Not even the denial of the fact that there are other ones. And then some of them are about coveting your neighbor and adultery. Why would an 8-year-old need to see that on the wall about adultery? There's one in there that almost applies that don't steal.
But that's almost it.
And don't murder.
Right. But a lot of these people who believe in the Ten Commandments, they don't have a
murder
problem with
stealing or murder,
war or
right. Okay.
You get my point.
Righteous indignation drives them to murder. But anyways, we're going all over. But let's just circle this back to this reactive, and this hypocrisy of starting, with them, and this branch of religion, and his speech, and how it was harmful, and how when this happened to him, certain individuals were not upset, and some were actually celebratory. Now, certainly, I wasn't celebratory because I was sickened, and I actually came across it, and I didn't realize that I was going to see what happened.
Oh, you actually saw it? I haven't watched it yet.
Don't do it.
Okay.
If you see that it's going to happen, don't do it, because it'll ruin your whole week, which it did to me, and I still want to fucking puke when I think about it. So if you don't get that visceral reaction, if you see that, I literally had empathy for the guy at that second when I saw that. Even though I came back to my senses and said, okay, let's remember what we're talking about here. But I felt that, and it was horrifying, very horrifying. I guess I still have some humanity left in me regardless. But when, what was I getting at? Because now it just totally threw me off. That Was I saying? I was talking.
I'm trying to see.
Yeah, we're getting far deep.
We
in
might
this.
want to wrap up.
So I'm just
part
going to wrap
one.
up this one
Okay,
part,
sure.
okay, and then tie this all together, and then go into a part two. But so we were talking about this reactive abuse. We were talking about how half this country doesn't understand why the other half isn't mourning, and even some celebratory. And I wanted to say that I'm not in mourning, and that I'm holding two beliefs simultaneously right now, which is somewhat of a some would people like, how can you do that? That's cognitive dissonance. But I think in a case like this, it's almost an emotionally mature reaction where you're saying, look, I can still believe that empathy is critical and crucial for the existence of humankind and to relieve suffering. But I can also say that those who did not engage in empathy and purposely and cruelly inflicted harm on others, and denied it and did nothing and did it in such a way that in such denial that he wouldn't even sit in good faith and say, look, I'm not trying to hurt you, but this is what I believe, and give an explanation from a heartfelt place instead of from an arrogant, super righteous, high and mighty place. That's one thing, but what he did was painful to a lot of people, and it hurt people. And like you said, even if he didn't actively engage in the violence, it created violence statistically. And even the legislation that gets passed against people is violence in a way. That in itself is violence. Reducing someone, taking away someone's humanity is violence. So these people have had violence inflicted upon them, right? So if they're in that community and they want to have a sense of relief for a minute, and I'm sure most of them, if you really sit down with them, they're not celebrating. They might be like, good, I'm not, almost everybody that I'm seeing is just like, yeah, like
I'm not
indifferent.
sorry that he's no longer here.
I'm sad it happened. I'm horrified it happened. I don't want that to happen. I don't think it should have happened. It was counterproductive. If that was the thing that was the message that we're coming to get you, it's counterproductive because it's just going to do what's happening now, which is they're going to come and kill innocent people who are just when I say these are innocent people, I am. People reacting to the abuse are the innocent people. They're not the bullied is not the aggressor. And I think this is where people just really need to get this straight. If you're on the fence on this and you're seeing this, please understand that if you're saying, I can't understand how somebody could celebrate this, but you weren't on then you must not have been on the receiving that hate, or you're on a trauma bond with this stuff. You're literally hugging your oppressor in this traumatic bonding of this, what happened in like they termed it the hostage situation, Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
It's a form of like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing. So, and like I said, it's all wrapped up in religion. So it's very difficult for some people who don't understand all this, and they don't understand the psychology behind it or anything like that.
But again, it's wrapped up in religion. But I was familiar with what I thought was right-wing evangelical religion growing up. But what I'm seeing recently, either I just wasn't fully aware of it, which is very possible, or it's shifted even further right, which is also possible, because this stuff is so extreme, it's not even funny.
It's just so enmeshed in politics now.
Right.
It's always existed. Those beliefs were always there, but they kept to themselves. Yeah. Now they want to apply it to everyone. So like I was going to say, now I'll wrap this up.
Okay.
This is the hypocrisy. This is the reaction, and like I said, it's mind-numbing that half this population is for what he was saying, and another probably third don't understand it enough to say, well, you shouldn't, you should really have empathy for him and his family. And his wife, oh my God, did you see her thing?
Oh, I heard about it. I haven't watched or listened, but
again, she's as bad as him.
That's my point. Yeah.
So feeling sorry for her.
I shouldn't be surprised, but
his kids, yeah, because they had to grow up with this stuff.
Right.
I feel sorry that they had a father like that and a mother like that. That's what I feel sorry for those kids.
Yeah.
Because now they're brainwashed, and now they're totally traumatized and brainwashed. Who knows what those kids are capable of now? Kind of like the shooter kid. Well, but that's what the next one will be about.
Yep.
So, yeah, we just wanted to say that we never, we kind of said that this probably something like this would happen. We didn't know which side it would be or how it was going to go down. This is the way it went down, at least the First huge one.
The first notable one, and hopefully the second one.
I think the first one was actually the two lawmakers from.
Well, only the problem with that is that it didn't generate the response that maybe it
Because
should've.
it was the left.
Yeah.
See, because look, and we'll get into this in the next one.
Okay,
When things
okay.
happen to people and people are groomed on the left, you generally almost not violent. Like they're civil disobedient, they'll burn down a building, but they're not going to go shoot somebody. It's in most cases. I mean, we don't have anarchists here like in 1914 with like a young Turk shooting
we don't have that. If I did a 10-minute search, I could probably come up with some example, but off the top of my head, I can't. Yeah.
It's not happening in that regard. It's these guys who are radicalized from the right, and even with Luigi. We'll get to the next one. How do you want to wrap it up?
I think for right now, let's just wrap it on. We're about to come back, but for sake of the format, if nothing else, we have to stop it at a particular time limit.
Right,
So
we're way over.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up some of my leftovers, and we'll give it about 2 minutes and pick it up where we left
Right.
off.
So in a nutshell, we predicted this. We don't condone this. Civil disobedience is there. Violence is probably going to happen even more in the future. This is reactive abuse, and that people can mourn any way they see fit. In my opinion, if it's from an abuser, and it's unfortunate that half this population is for what he is saying, and another portion doesn't understand the abuse and what reactive abuse is.